Welcome to church, everybody. I do hope that you are having a very, very happy Chinese New Year. I'm very, very glad to see everybody today. Come on, Aaron. But just before we start, I do have a very, very special person come up to the stage. Wayne, can you please come up? So if you didn't know, if you're new to the church today, you will know that if you've been around for a while, you will know that Wayne is a legend in the church. And he's very, very an awesome brother of ours, and I've had the privilege of really, really just mentoring and discipling him. But he's going to be shipped over to Auckland, and he will be back, fortunately. But I do want to present to you a Ed Sheeran Australia t-shirt, because his favorite artist is Ed Sheeran, and I do know that it means a lot to you. So this is for you. All the best in Auckland, my friend.
Auckland!
Please turn your Bibles to Luke chapter 6. My name is Aaron, and I've been serving in this church for a couple of years now. And in Australia, we have a very, very awesome Chinese New Year all the time. We have temples around, and I remember my very first experience in Chinese New Year. My dad took me to the temple, right? And there was a lot of loud banging, there was a lot of loud singing, lots of lion dancing going around. And I was standing around the circle where the crowd was, and there was firecrackers being lit up. And all of a sudden, a firecracker hit my leg, and it was the most painful experience ever. I don't think I really enjoyed Chinese New Year after that, but now that I'm married, I get this opportunity to give out red pockets. So thank you so much for James with that message. It is more blessed to give than to receive. There is a lot of talk going on in Wuhan with the coronavirus. And if we do have Chinese people here today that are concerned, I do want to send an encouragement out to you. Wuhan, China, Beijing has suffered from SARS, and they've overcome. They've suffered from floods, and they've overcome. They've suffered from chicken poxes, and they've overcome. Whatever they've been able to overcome, they have overcome. And China will overcome from whatever diseases that may be infecting this city, this country. But I was typing up Wuhan coronavirus on Google the other day, and I found out that there's this article saying that the Wuhan authorities are actually building a hospital within 6 days just to treat patients. Wow. 6 days. I know that the Chinese do a lot of things very, very quickly, but I didn't know that they were able to build a hospital in 6 days. Turns out they tried to go quicker than the Beijing hospital, which was opened up in 7 days during the SARS virus. So I guess there's a Chinese idiom that says 暗入盘氏固肉金汤, which means as solid as rock. I think about one of the most greatest construction projects of all time, which is the Great Wall of China. I looked at some facts, and I found out that there's a span of about 21,000 kilometers. It has a height of 7 meters, in some areas 14 meters. It's over 2,700 years old. There's more than a million people that were recruited to build it. It spans over 15 provinces of China, and it attracts over 50 million visitors each year. Interestingly enough, two of the materials that were used to create it were human beings and sticky rice. So I guess maybe that's the reason why they have to repair it all the time. Point one, what are you building on? Luke chapter 6, verse 46 to 49 says, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? As everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, I will show you what they are like. They are like a man building a house who dug deep and laid the foundation on rock. When a flood came, the torrent struck that house but could not shake it, because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed, and its destruction was complete." You know, everyone in this room is building something. You can be building your personality. You can be building your career, your grades, or even your body, like Sahil when he goes to the gym and doesn't work out his legs. Amen. You know, but building your life is like building a skyscraper. You need a solid foundation laid in order to build on top of it. You want to dig deep. You want to dig sufficiently. You want to be able to dig enough so that you can pass the test, the quality inspection test, so that you can build layer upon layer upon layer. And when life comes and strikes that building, it's not going to collapse. You know, I think about UNSW Foundations. I know that we have a lot of UNSW Foundation students in here, and that's what it's all about. It's laying a foundation for you. I'm very proud of the church. You know, all the Chinese disciples that came up here, it's not common for them to come up here and then present to the church, to serve the church. But I wanted to lift you guys up because you guys did a great job today. You know, we go through many tests in life, don't we? We go through physical tests, emotional tests, spiritual tests. Chinese students have to go through Gaokao. So if you guys don't know, Gaokao is literally the big test. And it's the Chinese National College Entrance Examination. Over 9.4 million students attend the Gaokao every single year. And it's considered one of the most important tests that a student has to go through. But sadly, lots of suicides happen as a result. You know, the Education Bureau has even made a ban on students not to rip up their tests, rip up their books right after the tests. You know, how well you go through a breakup is a test of your emotions, isn't it? Yeah. How well you cope with your parents comparing you to your friends' children is also a big one as well. I remember when I was swimming with a friend of mine, and you know, his name is Kenny Toe. Unfortunately, he's passed away now. But what was really startling for me was that I really hung on to that one time I beat him when I was 14 years old. Because every single time he would smash me in the water just from the start. And my parents would always be like, you know, you gotta copy Kenny, you gotta copy Kenny, you gotta copy Kenny. I think everyone here has experienced that. You know, how patient we are with our parents when it comes to technology is also a big one, isn't it? Yeah. You know, every time my dad comes in and, how do I do this? How do I do that? Dad, I've told you so many times! You know, I'm very impressed with Joe and Kerry. You know, for those that don't know, Joe and Kerry are the leaders in the church. And they're the ones that literally raise us all up. He raises me up. He raises Emmanuel up. He raises Effie up. He raises Ray up, which is his birthday. They raise up everybody in the church. And I'm just very impressed by them because they go through a lot of hard times as well. They go through a lot of financial tests. I remember literally in a Bible discussion, and I was leading that Bible discussion, all of a sudden I get a phone call from one of our sisters in Samoa named Jenna. And I pick up that phone and she screams on the phone and says, "Aaron, I need you to be really calm right now. Really calm. Joe and Kerry's house is falling down right now and the children is into the building right now. You have to go and save them." I was like, oh my goodness me, is that really true? I get in the car with Fang immediately, leaving Wayne, my right-hand man in the Bible talk, and go straight to that building. And I realized, wow, there really is so many sirens, so many police, so many ambulances, so many fire trucks. And we get in there, police is trying to interrogate us to make sure that, you know, what's the reason why we're trying to get into the building? We're trying to save somebody. Get us in. But we got in there and I was able to just analyze the foundation while I was going down the basement to get the car for Luke, Job's son. And driving out, I was able to see that all these different foundations that was implanted just to keep the basement still. And if you didn't know already, it's from Mascot Towers and it's all over the news. But they had to go through so much financial pressure. Literally 3 months into them living in there, they go on holiday and they get that phone call and hear that bad news. But here they are today, and they're known as Joyful Joe and Resilient Kerry. They're known as Joyful Joe and Resilient Kerry. And I'm just so proud of you guys because you guys give us an incredible spiritual example for us all to live. You know, the house that you build on is your life. The house that you're building is your life. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your foundation. The quality of your foundation. I want to ask you a question today. What is your foundation? Let me share with you what I was building on. I was building on my good looks. You know, it does take a long time for me to do I really think that I'm good looking? Well, everyone tells me that it's true, then it must be true. I remember going into an audition that my dad set up for me. It was for a movie acting role. I was quite young at that time. I go in, I was completely unprepared, and I meet the director, and I'm just standing there, and he's got this huge camera, like those cameras that Hank brings over every single time in church, and he gives me a script, and I look at it, and it's in Chinese. I'm like, I can't read Chinese. I'm Australian-born Chinese. I'm not Chinese, though. I can't read Chinese. I went to Chinese school, but I can't read Chinese. I don't care. Just read it. Okay, all right, okay. Well, okay. Ching chong chang chong chong ing long. I'm like, and he looked, okay, great, fantastic. I'll give you a call when when we know the results. Just like a job interview. So I leave. I don't get a call, obviously. But I'm curious. I want to find out why my dad, why I didn't get the phone call. And I asked my dad, hey Dad, so did you hear about anything from the job interview, from that movie acting role? And he said, well, they didn't hire you because you're too good looking for the role. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, that I can believe that. My friend talks about this strawberry generation. I've got this friend from China who calls the Chinese generation like a strawberry generation. When we look at, when I look at Chinese people, not just in the church, but outside, everybody looks really, really good. Have you noticed that? Chinese just look really good. They're so schmick. They wear Gucci, they wear Nike, they wear all these different brands, and they just look so good. But when pressure comes and you squeeze that strawberry, it's just gooey and gooey inside. Have you ever noticed why when you go to Woolies and Coles, the strawberries are all laid out in the front of the store? It's because they look very, very good. But when you squeeze it, there's nothing that really comes out except for gooey and mushy stuff. The foundation needs to be very, very important. Jesus says that if you are either building on if you are putting Jesus' words into practice, it's like building your house on a solid foundation. But if you're not practicing the Bible, Jesus says that you're building on no foundation. My good looks was no foundation at all. I think we can build on a lot of different foundations, like, for example, our parents' expectations of us. Maybe our past reputation. Let me tell you, just because you're known as someone who aces all your grades doesn't mean that you don't need to study. Maybe you're building your life on some false beliefs. I remember when I first got baptized in the church and I started studying the Bible. And when I was studying the Bible, I just realized just how much sin just was in my life. I'm born as Australian-born Chinese. So in Australian culture, we do drugs, we smoke weed, we snort cocaine, we do all these different drugs, and we induce a lot of drugs and drink a lot of alcohol. That's the Australian culture right there. And I didn't realize that it was just consistently consuming my life, destroying my life so much that I completely lost track of my own spiritual life. Are you there today? Are you there right now and you're feeling like you've got so much, you're consumed by the worldly things of this life, and you don't make a decision to actually chase after God? Sin is like finding sand in your pocket. You know, when you go to the beach, you get into the waters and you come out and you're just trying to pull your pocket out and you realize sand just keeps coming out. Sand keeps coming out. You know, sin is just like that. Sin is very, very pleasurable. But you have to put God in the center of your life. You know, when you take a jar and you put sand in first, and then the pebbles, and then the larger rocks, depending on how big your jar is and how in there, you're not going to be able to put in the bigger rocks in your life. You know, God is the biggest rock in our lives. You got to put God in the center, and you got to put God in first before you put in the pebbles, before you put in the sand, before you put in the water. You know, I want to leave you with a quote from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. If you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. I want to challenge everyone today. What are you building on? Point number 2, build on God. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 to 27. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and in the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. You know, we are made in the image of God. We're not made in careers. We're not made in sex. We're not made in different sort of things in the world. We're made in the image of God. John chapter 4, verse 23 to 24. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshippers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshippers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshippers must worship in the Spirit and in truth. God is spirit. You know, when I'm speaking to a lot of Chinese at UNSW, there's a lot of Chinese foundations coming around right now. They always ask me, why should I believe in God? If only God can just come in and storm the room right now, maybe then I will believe in God. But my friend, God is spirit. You're looking for something too physical. We're all looking for a physical manifestation of God. Why do you think there's so many false idols in the form of wood, stone, metal, gold? Money is a form of idol. Anything can be a form of idol if it's put in front of God. You know, we're not supposed to be made in the physical image of God. We're supposed to be made in the spiritual image of God. What are the spiritual images of God? Love, peace, hope, forbearance, kindness, purpose, meaning in life. These are the kind of things that God is made in spirituality. You know, God, most people from China doesn't believe that God exists. And God, the concept of God is just not there. But you know, when we look at Hebrews chapter 11, verse 3, by faith we understand that the worlds were prepared by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things which are visible. You know, God created the visible out of the invisible, because God is not visible, but he acts on the visible. You know, I think about things that we see but we believe in. I think about wind. We don't see it, but we observe it and we can feel it. I think about gravity. I think gravity is so incredible. When you think about dropping a bowling ball and dropping a feather at the same time, it drops and hits the ground at the same time. We can observe gravity, but we can't see gravity. You know, I think about even just graduation as well. Do you see how you're actually going to go through graduation? I don't think so. You know, sometimes that's what it's like. We need to have faith in order to believe in something. You know, I want to share with you a few Chinese words. You know, chuan, which means boat. If you put the word for vessel and the number 8 as well as people together, you have the word for boat. You know, Noah's Ark was saved with 8 people in there. You know, I think about Zhao, which means to create, which comes from speak, dust, life, and walk. God spoke creation into existence. I think about the word for forbidden or to warn. 2 trees, and underneath that, the word for God. I think about, 2 trees with a cover is equal to devil. It goes on and on and on. When we look at different Chinese characters, we actually find the creation story in the Bible from Chinese characters. China has not any form of, doesn't have any God in China at the moment in terms of from Christianity. But what we do know is that God has always been in China if we just look deeper into the characters. A faith in God does not come from looking at evidences. If we look at Romans chapter 10, verse 17, consequently, faith comes from hearing the message. You got to read the Bible in order to get faith. God is our rock. He's outside of time. He's immovable. He doesn't change based on time, as Fang shared for communion, because he's outside of time. If he was inside of time, he wouldn't be God, because he would be a finite God. Therefore his expectations for us don't change, just like the world's expectations change about us. Psalm 23 verse 4, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Walking down the beach with God is like a poem that I want to share with you. One night a man had a dream. He dreamed he was walking along the beach with the Lord. Across the sky flashed scenes from his life. For each scene he noticed 2 sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to him and the other to the Lord. When the last scene of his life flashed before him, he looked back at the footprints in the sand. He noticed that many times along the path of his life, there was only 1 set of footprints. He also noticed that it happened at the very lowest and saddest times in his life. This really bothered him, and he questioned the Lord about it. Lord, you said that once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I have noticed that during the most troublesome times in my life, there is only 1 set of footprints. I don't understand why when I needed you the most, you would leave me. The Lord replied, my son, my precious child, I love you, and I would never leave you. During your times of trial and suffering, when you see only 1 set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. It was then when, my dad lifted me up and carried me when I got hurt by that firecracker. Christianity is not just for the weak. We're all weak, but it's the Christians that actually accept that they are weak. I am so proud of my wife. So my wife went to Harvard, right? So there's a lot of expectations for someone who went to Harvard, right? And coming over here, when she was coming over here to train for the full-time ministry, there was a lot of expectations on her to do well, to do good, to be excellent at everything. And at the same time too, it's not the human expectations that we need to live up to, but it's the expectations that God has for us. Seeing how God views her instead of seeing how people viewed her was so important for her to continue to be joyful as she always is, We have a lot of expectations of each other, and the world likes to tear each other down. But Christianity is all about building each other up. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just in fact you are doing. I love my brothers in the East region. I love James. I love Roger. I love Dune, Wayne, Leo, now that he's moved over to Parramatta. But I love these brothers. Why? Because they encourage me to continue to fight, to continue to do what is right, to just be a Christian. I think about when Leo started coming around. And when Leo started coming around, he was put into a completely new, different church because he was from Hong Kong. And I remember sitting with him, and he's like, I can't find joy in anything right now because of my new living situations. But, I was like, yeah, that's really, really difficult. But you got to keep going. You got to find joy in God. You can't depend on different situations or different living situations or expectations of the world in order to find joy. You got to find joy in God. And if you look at him, he's like the most fired up, the most joyful brother in in the ministries. You know, I think about James and how James has been taken over the song leading for the church. And he's just been this guy that's just continued to grow and grow and grow in his song leading. I'm very, very proud of James. You know, I still remember when Dune came around. When Dune came around, James reached out to him and asked him, do you want to come to Bible Talk? And, you know, at that time, you know, he was like, no, I'm not interested, and started walking away. But then when James was like, we have free food, Dune was like, whoa, his eyes lit up. I'm coming to Bible Talk. And now, if you ask him, wherever he goes, doesn't matter if he's in Sydney or China, wherever he goes, if you ask him, will you be faithful, Dune? And he will say, I will always be faithful. You know, I think about Dean. When Dean came around to the church, Dean's from Shenzhen, and he came over here to study finance. And, you know, at that time, he was learning about Christianity, and he was being brought in by all these brothers in the church, and just being really in Christianity. He always shares this scripture, Psalm 34 verse 8. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in him. You know, at that time, he was tasting and tasting and tasting and tasting to see that God was really good. You know, but when he was challenged to really just do it and become a Christian, fully committed, you know, he's like, oh, but this and that, I wanted to go to America. And I want to find a blonde American woman to marry. But at that time, you know, he was like, okay, you need to go back to China to save your people. And he made that decision. I'm going to leave that dream of mine and just chase God's dream and just follow God into China. And now that he's actually in Hong Kong leading the church, he's actually got an American blonde wife. You know, I think about when I was praying in LA last year. We met an awesome brother from one of the different churches in LA, and his name was Jesse Hoagland. And he took us up to the very top of LA, looking over this incredible view. And Obed at that time was with me as well. And I remember praying this prayer. I was like, God, I've been spending a lot of time with you know, Fang lately. You know, we've been, you know, having a good time at the GLC, the Global Leadership Conference, and you know, I think I like her. I think she could be my wife. And at the time, we were not dating. At that time, I mean, I didn't even know that she was liking me at all. But I remember praying that prayer, and then coming back to Sydney while we were working out with some brothers in the church. And Joe was asking James, one of the brothers, and he was like, hey, do you like Fang, James? And James was like, no. No. But then all of a sudden, I'm like at the back just trying to work out as much as I can, you know, trying to like get out of this kind of conversation. And then I was like, oh, actually, I think I like Fang. And then all of a sudden we started dating, and and after 8 months we got engaged and we got married about 5 months ago. You know, prayer is a really powerful tool if you're seeking God. You know, Matthew chapter 7 verse 7 to 11. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks the door will be opened. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? I want to challenge everybody here today that is not part of the church already, who doesn't believe in God right now. Come to the all-night prayer tonight and taste and see that God is good. I want to lift up, you know, Aaron. Not me, but Aaron over there. Aaron's from Heilongjiang, which is in China, a very cold part of China, very northern. It's very close to Korea. And, you know, he came over here to study law. And he started studying the Bible with Leo. And today, he's getting baptized. So if I can get Aaron and Leo and Dune to come up, because they've been involved in helping Aaron to make this decision. We're going to share a little bit for Aaron today.